Welcome, Admirals, to this primer, or this, I guess, this introduction video, literally on how space combat works in Distant Worlds 2. I hope you've been enjoying the series so far. My name is DasTactic. We're just following a fleet actually into the Yavin system, ready to sort of take on a pirate base. So this is actually a fleet that was actually brought in. Might just pause the game and then we can talk about how combat actually works. So I've sort of paused this one. We can sort of zoom back out, start to sort of move it around, have a look at this particular fleet. So I'll try to go through the basics in this video of space combat, how it works. We've got an actual fleet in through here. I'm going to go through pretty much again just trying to gear this for new players so that you don't get overwhelmed with trying to figure out, wow, there's so much to take on board. Now you can really nail in on space combat or any of the aspects in Distant Worlds to really finesse what's going on, but you don't have to. And so I'm going to sort of show you how to first of all do it so that you can just sit back and just watch what actually happens without having any involvement whatsoever. And then just sort of going through the bits and pieces you may want to start to consider as you get used to the game. So let's go back up into our trusty old policy screen, which is under government, or it's under Empire, sorry, the Empire screen, which is the first one. And then across, and we're playing, in this instance, we're playing as a Dayut, which is the one of the new factions in the DLC, or in the first DLC. So we're just going to go across the policy settings. Now, I've got this set on custom at the moment. Because I do want to actually, I'm actually taking over control of the fleets. I don't have to. I can actually let the AI do it. I'm just going to show you the relevant areas in the policies that you may want to sort of look at for yourself if you're wanting to literally just sit back and let the game do what it wants to do. There's not very much we have to consider in here, to be honest. So the first one, as we sort of scroll down this particular list, is one where we've got ship construction. Now, by default, that will be on suggest, where it will then sort of suggest to you what it wants to build. And if you're just playing, like if you just want the AI to manage that, you may want to flick that one across to automatic, where it will then just sort of automatically build whatever ship it wants. And that way it'll sort of do what the other empires are doing. It'll sort of just build what it thinks it needs and sort of have everything ready to go in the actual game itself. Now, it will create a percentage of ships for fleets, and it will also create a few ships just for patrolling around the system. Now, personally, I don't bother about just leaving ships patrolling around the system. I pretty much put all the ships into fleets. Different play styles, you know, different people have different ways of actually doing things. I find that lone ships, particularly when you're going up against pirates, for example, the pirates will outgun you, and so I find that you do need to have numbers together to be able to take on the pirates. But if it's there with a base, the base also will then have some sort of combat abilities. Anyway, I'm sort of getting off track. I wanted to keep this one fairly short if I can, which I don't think I'm going to be able to be honest. So ship construction is the first area that you want to be doing. So you may want to pop that to automatic if you don't want to do anything, or leave it on suggest back in through this side. I've now played the game in far enough that I no longer want the AI telling me what to build or suggesting what to build. I'm just going to go across now and just build my own at this stage in this particular game. Base construction is the opposite. I actually like what the AI always suggests. It always makes a good choice. So I'm just going to, or it generally makes a good choice. Sometimes it doesn't, but generally it's going to be choosing a good option for the mining bases, for research stations, for facilities on planets, all those sorts of things. Anything where it needs to sort of build something, yes, just fully automate that. So that's what I've been doing in through this side. Now, the next thing we want to have a bit of a look at is, as we sort of come on down through the various lists, the very bottom of this first section, by default, fleet formation, fleet postures, and fleet ship management will all be on automatically if you choose the default. Now, I always manually control these because I enjoy this aspect of the game. I like to design my own ships. I like to do everything that I need to do with fleets. And so I tend to this is the bit of the game that I like playing. If you don't like that, or if you just want the AI to do that for you, leave it on automatic. Just be aware though, that if you leave it on automatic and then try to sort of go in and do your own thing, the automation may then go back and rechange what you've done and put something else in there. So that's the first thing, just in terms of basic sort of policies back in through this side. Now, that's under the advisors and automations. There's not too much there to sort of to take on board. If we go down a bit further down to construction, we're then going to have the same deal again: ship construction, base construction, and we can then set other things up, but I won't go through this in any sort of detail at this point in time. It's just telling the game how to then prioritize what to build when to build spaceports. So you can actually you can tweak what the AI will do. Again, have a look at this. I won't go into any detail with this, but you can actually sort of see what you want this to sort of be. So you've got like different sorts of priorities, for example, of what to build when, what to sort of, how to structure things, what ratio of ships to build. So there's a lot you can do within the automation system if you want the game to still just automate, but you want to then have a bit of control over what they actually then go and build. So build independent ships or repair independent ships. I'm not sure what that actually does, to be honest. Whether to build new freighters for independent traders. Yeah, okay, so that's actually fine. It's just yes on by default. Okay, so I never change this because I always handle all this manually anyway. So that's actually fine where that is. And that's pretty much it. At that point in time, I think military, this is actually what they're likely to attack. Yeah, so capture condition for ships, when to actually capture ships. There's a lot in here to look at. I don't want to be spending a lot of time talking about this just now, but have a look at it. Have a look inside the policies. The policies are how you automate. They're not the policies of your government. They're the policies of how you are playing the game. What you want to have the computer to look after. And again, you can play the game with absolutely full like rule and absence with full automation, which will then turn pretty much everything onto automatic, or basically none, where you have none, which I wouldn't ever advise that, even if you are an expert. I tend to play on default and then just tweak what I want. And the first thing I do tweak is I turn off the automation for the fleets because I like managing that myself. So that's where we are at currently in this particular game. So with this fleet that we actually have, that's where we are. Now the fleet is made up of ships. So let's have a quick look at ships, and I'll just give you a bit of a rundown, but we're going to go through this in much more detail in other videos. Ships are built at your spaceports. And so if I go across to a spaceport, which we've got one over here at USOS, in the USOS system, which is here at USOS 6, which is our capital. So if I just go back across to this spaceport that we actually have over through this side, I can tell the game to build ships for me. So I can go across, and I'll just go through the different ways of doing all these things. I can go across, and again, I'm going to be covering this in more detail in other episodes as well. But the way I can actually build things at the spaceport, or actually at the planet for that matter for small ships, is I can go to this build new ship or base, and if I go to the spaceport, this is a build new ship or base in through here. When I click on that one, what it will have is, if it has more than just one line, there'll be another drop-down list. There may be more here, for example. There we go. We've now got more than what we can sort of squeeze into that particular panel, so it'll then just put the extras onto there. Because we can build bases from here, we can't really build bases from an existing base. And so if I want to build a ship, for example, there's a fuel barge, there's a small troop transport, there's a torpedo frigate, which is part of our fleet. There's just a basic escort. There's a heavy escort, a patrol escort. There's a colonizer, which we can't afford to build just yet. It requires 45,000 credits. A small shipyard ship. There's an explorer ship. And then we've got a couple of research stations and resort bases if we had bonuses at the particular planet. So that's what we can actually then go and do from USOS 6. And so these are one way to build the ships. And I can just literally go and click and say, yep, I want to be building a heavy escort. So I just go and click that one. It gets added to the queue. The money comes off the list, and we can keep on sort of queuing them up that way if we wanted to. So that's one way to build ships. So we've now got one queued up in through there. Another way we can do it is that we can go across up into our ship construction area and just go across and go to this screen here, which is the build order. And so you're giving a build order. It's not the order of what's being built. It's actually you're giving an order to build things. And so if I'd say, okay, look, I really want the more heavy escorts. Let's go and get one. Now, I'll scroll out so you can sort of see the difference of what goes on here. This is basically on a system-by-system basis. And this is a really good way if you are wanting to build, for example, actually one of the things you may be wanting to build would be shipyards, like just shipyards in through here. You highlight, the actual area, it will then show you on this screen, so you can be right back out and sort of watch to see what's going on. Now I can build two different ways with this. I can see there that it's going to be slightly faster for me to build a construction ship at the Cyrenaea system, 263 seconds to build one, or 266 seconds, so basically the same, but I can build them there. Now, two ways I can do this. I can just go and start to put the up arrow up and see how it's now said, yep, I want to build one there, do the second one down through there. There's now one in each of these. And so that's now what's being going to be constructed at these two locations. If I'm happy with that order, I can then just go on to purchase, and then that will be added to the queue as well. The other way I can do this is just to left click and just say, okay, I want to have two built there, for example, or I can right click to then remove things. So if I wanted to just have one ship built at the USOS area, in the USOS system, one construction ship queued, if I'm happy with the order, I then just click on purchase. Bang, done. Money goes down again. And if we go back in and have another look, it will either be at this location with the spaceport. Yep, there it is. So we've now got the construction ship, and actually the second construction ship is being added in there as well. So there's already another one there. Now I thought we did anyway, that'll be sort of what's going on there. So anyway, that's the, now there may be others. Sometimes there'll be other things being built, small freighters being built. So the private sector would be building away. Anyway, that's the ship design. Just very, very briefly, we're going to go through this in much, much more detail in in future videos. It'll probably be more than one video. Ship designs are also done from the construction tab under ship designs. Now in through here, what you'll notice is that I've got a couple of ships set to manual. Now what I like to do here is actually have my role is where I sort it. I like to have active buildable designs and then just by role, and then I can sort of see, okay, what's manual. Now I'm manually designing the rail patrol escort and the beam heavy escort. So they're the two escort ships. I'm not worrying about this one. The AI is looking after the design for that particular escort. The AI does a good job of its ship design. So don't feel that you have to design your own ships. I'm only sort of getting in the middle of these three ships, the frigate, and then a patrol escort and a heavy escort. That's all I'm doing. The rest of it, I'm just letting the AI manage that for me. I don't care about what it does because it does a good job. I can go and have a look and see what they're doing. For example, those constructors will be in here as well somewhere. They will be under, where is it? The shipyard, the CST3 construction ship. So if I go across to here, now we've already got 4 of these built, and so there's 4 of them active, so I can't actually go and edit what's happening in here anyway. The AI is going to automatically change what we do, but I can go in and have a look to see what it's actually made up of. What are the components that have been put on this particular ship, so I can actually go in and see what the AI has done. So if I don't like what it's done, I can then go in and take over the design. But generally, the AI does a good job, so don't feel that you need to design your own ships. I will be going through how to do it and what to look for in future episodes, but you don't need to do it. So you can just let the AI do it. Like for example, if we go and have a look and see, okay, what's the escort that it's looking after? If I go into the Batumi 2, which is what it's currently up to, if we just go and edit this particular one, we don't actually have any of these, so I can actually then go and change the design. We've never built any of these. So this I can actually go and tweak if I wanted to. And so just having a bit of a look at this one, it's got a rail gun, it's got a point defense gun, 2 engines, a short-range sensor, armor, deflection field generator, so like a shield. It's actually... The only thing I would change with this, if I was going to edit this particular ship, would be to change the short-range sensor for a different type of sensor. That would be the only thing I'd really do there, and potentially change the railgun for a different type of weapon. That would be it. It's still got a fair bit of space that we can actually sort of manipulate with this as well. So, but I'll be going through in detail how to do this. If you're interested, you don't have to. You can just basically go and just choose what the AI gives you, and that's fine. Like it's... I do find that I get better results by micromanaging the design of my ships. I like doing it. It's part of what I enjoy in the game, but I've also get a lot of comments from people when I'm doing that to say, do I have to do this? No, you don't. Just let the AI build away. Don't worry about it. Just manage instead of managing the actual construction or the design of the ship, you can just manage how many of a ship you get, and you'll find that the AI will fairly cleverly sort of give you a range of different sorts of things that the ships will do anyway. So it does a good job of designing the ships. You don't have to get in the middle of that if you don't want to. Right, so that's the designs. Now, after we have started to build ships, the next thing I want to talk about very, very briefly, I've got to have brief, 15 minutes, that's not too bad. I'm going to show you some combat in a minute, I just wanted to get established how the structures of how things sort of then progress to before you can sort of get a fleet. Now the fleets, you can actually put ships together by selecting them and just going and adding a fleet. Now I don't actually have any spare ships in this particular area, but you can go and ultimately, if you do select a group of ships, like if I, for example, just go back into where I've got this particular grouping of ships in through here, if I just control and then left click and just drag a few of them, you can see down the bottom here, when I've got ships selected, I can then just go across and go create new fleet with these ships. And so I can create a different fleet with just those ships that we've got selected, which I don't want to do because they're already part of a fleet. So that's one way to create a fleet. There is also another way, which I'm going to go through in a lot of detail in its own video, which will be up to here under military. This is our military tab. We've got two different areas that are of interest in here. One is the ship templating system, which is what I'm using in this particular game. I love this, but it's complex. So again, if you leave the AI to manage all that for you, it will automatically put them in fleets for you. You don't have to worry about it. I like to control this myself, and so I use this fleet template to do everything that I need to do. So we're just going to go across and leave that one alone. The other way you can actually look at fleets is to go across. The second one in is fleets, and you can see I've only got like 2 fleets in through here. One with 18 ships, which is the first defence force is this group, and I've got another fleet, the second defence force, with only 6 ships in it. And so that's sort of what we actually have in through there. This is the combat power that we sort of see in through there, and this is sort of like a vague summary, not even vague, it's actually a summary of how the game calculates combat ability. And so we've got a combat ability of 1,117 with the first fleet, and we're going to be using the first fleet to have a look to see how things actually do operate. And so, and also just to very briefly sort of show, this one is, I'm using this one manually. So I've actually got this particular fleet set where I'm actually deciding what it's going to do, rather than having the AI. But I can, if I wanted to, if I just go through how to select fleets. There's a whole lot of different ways to select fleets. One is to open up this tab and then just go and press the first defence force, which then brings the fleets down through this side. If I want to change the automation once it's selected, I just go down and change that one to the type of fleet that I want it to be. So if I go back to a defend fleet, it will then be a defence fleet back in through there. Now I can still actually override what it's doing, and as soon as I override it, it will then become a manual fleet again. Anyway, the other way of selecting fleets, there's numerous ways. Another way of doing it is to select a ship that is part of a fleet, and then just click it a second time, and it then will select that fleet. And so the second click will then choose the fleet itself back down this way. Another way of doing it is to press the F key, and it will then cycle through your fleets. There's the other fleet, the second. Press F again. There's the first fleet. Now that's often the way I do it, because I just cycle through until I get what I want. When I've got a ship, like a fleet like this, I tend to then just give it a number. So at the moment, I've got the number 1 key selected. So if I press number 1 on my keyboard, bang, it selects that particular fleet. So with that fleet selected, if I wanted to sort of give it the number, I can just go Control 1, and you'll see hotkey 1 set to the first defence force. So that's an easy way of managing your fleets, or at least being able to select them. At least the first 10 anyway. You will end up with more than 10 fleets eventually in the game, but initially you don't need that many of them. So this particular fleet that we now have selected we want this one to go on an attack against a pirate station. Now there's a pirate station that just happens to be over here. So we've got this particular one just sitting under the rings of this gas giant, and so this is sort of like a Saturn-like sort of planet. And so I'm just going to go, now if I do a right click to send the first defence force, so I can do the right click to send the first defence force, strength 1096. It's actually that's what it's showing in through there, which is a bit different than what we saw in the actual fleet thing, but it's close. So I can just right click to prepare and attack the secluded rest. Now, if I do a single right click, that's what's going to happen. If I do a long right click, and I suggest that you get into the habit of doing this in the game for most things, just hold it down for a bit longer than just an actual quick click. So if I do a long click, I then get other context menus of what I can then go and do. So I can go, and if I just do the initial click, that's what it would be. So it would just do a prepare and attack the secluded rest. If I do this one here, it's just going to go straight in and do an attack. So what's the difference between prepare and attack and attack? The difference is that if the fleet is all over the place and needs to come together before it's got the strength to take on this particular base, then it would actually wait for the ships to arrive together and then go in as a group, or it would actually coordinate so that they all jump in together at the same time to start the attack. So prepare and attack is a really, really good method of just having everything ready, or as much ready as possible, before you start the attacks. Now, my whole fleet is together at the moment, so really whether I do prepare an attack or attack, they're already prepared. So they're already in a group, in a cluster, ready to go in. The attack secluded rest will be back in through this side, so we can just go straight in. Either one of these will actually work. You can see there the strength of this thing is about 300, so we've got about a 3-to-1, bit more than a 3-to-1 ratio with the attack. This won't be a difficult fight for us. So that's sort of where we are with that one. I can also blockade this one if I wanted to, which I wouldn't want to, or just move in. Or we can just stop our fleets entirely. And so these are the different things we can do. By the way, some of these, like the stop command, is also down in here if we want to stop it from doing whatever orders we've given it. And so I'm just going to go and do a prepare and attack the secluded rest. And so the ships will now take on attack secluded rest as its mission back in through there. If I just get rid of that screen through there, it's also going to show it back in through this side. So now we're ready for combat. It's taken a long time, 20 minutes, to get to the point where we can now talk about actual combat. So I wanted to just give the context as we go through. And as I say, I'm going to be doing detailed videos about all these things. The next videos I'm going to be doing are basically how this next phase is going to be then playing out. So our ships are all over here. They've now got a line where they're going to go and do the attack on that particular secluded rest. So they're at this location over at Yavin 5. They're going to be moving across to Yavin 4, which is this gas giant. So the ships, if we sort of go back and have another look at these, I can unselect these if I wanted to and just sort of watch what they do. It's going to look pretty cool. They're just going to sort of start to move around. I've got it pretty slow. Let's just speed up time a little bit. They'll then sort of zip around, line up and get ready to go in on the attack. They're all then going to leave and go into hyperspace. Just wait. It just takes a bit of time for the warp engines to warm up. If it's close enough, they'll just stay with the impulse drives. But they're all queuing up. If I select one of these, you'll see it's just getting ready to jump. And eventually, it will then sort of hit the limits of what it needs. There they go, bang, they've all sort of now hit hyperspace. And if we sort of zoom back out again, I'll just go back up at the top here a little bit, they're now all moving across towards the attack. So let's now wait for them to arrive. In fact, none of them have arrived. The first one has arrived here. This is a heavy escort. So let's just watch what actually goes on through this side. The others will all be appearing fairly soon if we just sort of zoom down. Here they all come. So they're all bouncing in out of where they actually are. Now they're all getting ready to move in on the space station. So we're going to be starting the combat. Let's now talk about the aspects of combat in the game. Now remember, again, I don't have to do this because I can just have the whole game automated where it will pick and choose its own targets. It'll make its own fleets if it wants to. I like to control this aspect, so I've told it what to do. I have also designed the ships as well. So we're going to see some things in here, and I'll just talk a little bit about what we're seeing with this particular fleet. And so I'll go through the 3 different ship designs. They're the 3 manual ones that I had set up before, and I manually made them for this fleet. Back over through here as well with the secluded rest. Let's talk about the basics now of combat and how it actually does work. And we'll start with our ships, I think, and then work across to the other secluded rest. So let's go and pick one of these. This is a rail patrol escort. It's the closest to the actual secluded rest. Now what I've got selected in through here is I do actually have display weapon ranges for selected ships. With that one turned on, I can then see that there's actually an area around the ship, this pink area. Sometimes it will be a blue area. So this is the range of our weapons. And so we've got a range of weapons in through this particular one. If I highlight this bar at the top here, the weapons bar, I get a summary like strength 59, the average damage per second is 4.8, and the range is 950 is my maximum range. Now there's actually two weapons at play here. We've got two weapons on this particular ship, and if I just go and click on this, we'll then keep this one active, and we can scroll down if it needs to scroll down. We've got two weapons. We've got a Sentinel multi-beam, which is a point defense weapon, and we have a railgun, which is like a kinetic weapon. It sort of fires slugs, so it fires physical slugs at the enemy. You can see there the actual damage. If I hover over this one through here, we've got the standard damage, which is coming from our railgun, which is coloured in red. So sustained damage per second. I'll just get this sound down a little bit. Considers available energy and targeting accuracy, and so the damage per second is 8.6. Range is 950, and the minimum damage per second is 0.9, because if at maximum range, it's going to do less damage than at close range. And I'll briefly talk about this as well. Actually, I might show that now as well when we go in, actually, as to what's going to happen. There's only 3 designs we have to go through. So this one has got a very short range in terms of what the game actually does do. Let's have a look at this one in a bit of detail. So that's the actual weapon summary. So it's a bit of a summary as to what the weapons are on the ship. So again, you can do this for any ship or any base that you can see. And so we'll get, if you're close enough to sort of do like a trace scan on the actual ship itself. And so in this case, we've got a trace scan on the secluded rest. So even if I go to the secluded rest, I can see that it's got a damage per second of 9.3, a range of 3,600, which is out to here. So that's the edge of its range. I don't know if you can see that clearly. It's been hard to see it, but that is the range of the longest range weapons that it has. If I go and click on this one, I can then see again, if I sort of scroll back down, I've got standard damage, which is coming from the, and you'll see that it's got like a different sort of damage per second across different ratings in through there. There's the 3,600, leaving it right out to that side, and that will be the concussion missiles. The heavy railgun will be in around here somewhere, I think, with its damage. It's also got interceptor missiles for its point defense, which come out to this distance, so it goes a fair way out. Again, we can just hover over to see what sort of damage per second we're going to be actually then going and getting from these. So that's what we're getting through that one. We also have some of these, we've also got small starfighter bay, which is actually not shown in this particular screen, but this is where we've got small craft that will actually then be flying out from the station. They'll already be launched. In fact, I think that may be them there. So they're already on their way to attack our ships, and we'll have a look at that as well. I'll just go through all of the different aspects in this particular episode, just as a bit of an overview, and then we'll go through, and this is still going to be detailed, but it's just to give you a bit of a feel. I'm not going to actually tell the fleet to do anything other than what I've already told us to do. I'm not going to get in the way of anything now. I'm just going to let it do its own thing. So anyway, that's what the station has. It does have a bombard. The bombard is for bombarding planets, so we don't need to worry about that one so much. Let's just leave that one alone. The next little screen that we actually have over here, which is of interest, is we've got shields, armor, and hull. And then underneath that, and I can't click to leave that one open, unfortunately, but I just have to hover over through this side. What we have is, it's like an onion. The outer layer is the shielding, so you should have shields on your ships. The next layer down is armor, and how many different sorts of armor you actually have. Now they've got like 216 armor coming from 3 different armor slots essentially within their design, with what we can see there. And then the hull itself has got like is also then the actual, so underneath the armor is the actual hull, and inside the hull, actually on and inside the hull, are various things like engines, weapons, defenses, sensors, hangars, and general slots. And inside those, it then shows what the total amount is, what the normal is, like whether it's actually operating under normal parameters, like whether it's operational or not, if it's been damaged. Now, damaged means that it can be repaired. So if something gets damaged and it's only lightly damaged, it will fix itself up. And quite often, when you're doing light damage on something, it will be repairing as fast as you're doing damage. So we'll probably see that in this episode, actually. Destroyed means that you've done enough damage to a component that it's no longer has the capability to repair itself. And so that component will then be damaged, will be destroyed to the point where it can't be repaired. And then you've got disabled. Now, we don't actually have any weaponry in here that can disable, but the disable is if you've got like iron weapons or something like that, it will then sort of actually hit the like the ship or the base or whatever it might be, and start to disable various componentry inside that particular entity. And so this is one thing that there is protections you have against all these different things as well. Now I'm going to go through in detail how it all works. Let's just keep it really basic though for this one. So we have certain things where we have to go. Usually, like if you're just using like beam weapons or something like that doesn't do anything too tricky, you have to then first of all do enough damage to bring the shields down, then you have to do enough damage to break through the armor, then you have to start doing damage to the hull. Now, as you do damage to the hull, you'll then start to do damage to the components in the craft itself. Eventually, if the hull gets down to 0, that means that it blows up. So that's actually, if you're trying to destroy it, you have to destroy the hull, and that's the end of it. But over the course of getting that hull down to 0, you will be damaging and destroying the componentry inside it. So if we have a look at this particular one, this particular spaceport, we can see what's inside this. If I just go and click on this one, this is their spaceport in through there. We can sort of have a bit of a look. And so this is the pirate base. And we can see through there, it's got a damage control unit which fixes things up. It's got other sorts of things like reactors, fuel cells. Fuel is required to run the reactors. The reactors are required to shoot the weaponry, but I'll go through that in detail as well in another episode. These are all the different weapons that it does actually have, and you can hover over these to see what the range is. So 1450, for example, but the base itself will have a weapons range increase of plus 100%. So there's a lot of information back over here as well that goes through all sorts of different things. For example, there's no countermeasures, so it doesn't have any bonus to avoiding anything, but it does actually have a bonus to hitting things. So the weaponry will actually be more targeted, so it will actually do more damage to actually try to hit us. So we have to take that into account a little bit, but this is sort of what's going on through this side. It'll then sort of show how the energy is being used from the 2 reactors that it has on board. It will show the shielding and the armor. You can see there's 3 shields. There's actually 3 armor as well, which we saw there, with each one of them with a rating of 72. So we have to get through all of that armor before we can start to do damage to the hull, unless we have special weapons, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Then we have the scanners, construction yards in this case, because these can build ships, and then also the small starfighter bay, which has only got a fighter capacity of 4. So there's only 4 small craft that can actually stay on this particular base. So that's actually what we have on the inside. So I enjoy having a look to see what's actually on these things, to see what can actually be done. Now, they've got concussion missiles, is probably their main weapon. Now, this has got a range of 1800. Now remember, we've got 1800 is the longest range we saw there, plus we have the plus 100% back up the top through here. So the 100%, also the shield recharge rate. The shields, if I hover over these ones, you can see that there's actually a recharge rate of 0.8 points per second, so basically nearly 1 point per second. It does double that one, so it's going to do 1.6, for example, will be the recharge rate on this particular base. So the shields will come up fairly fast, and that actually can have a big bearing on what you're doing. So that's actually what the base has got. It's got every single hull has got their own I guess aspects which sort of that kick in for what they're actually doing. Anyway, that means the 1800 for the concussion missiles, if we just go back and have a look at this one, is going to then give it the range. We double that to get the range of 3,600. And now again, do you need to know this? No, you don't. Is it good to know it? I think it is, because it just gives you a bit of a feel for what's going on. For me, it also gives a lot more immersion into what's actually happening in the actual fight itself. So we're still a fair way away from here. Now, this is interesting as well. There's 2 interceptors that it actually has that are active and 1 bomber, and it's building 1 other bomber. So there's 1 more bomber being built. So there's only 3 small craft somewhere. It wasn't the ones that I thought it was. That the small craft will launch fairly soon. We might have a look at that one. I I don't think that they're in the... Actually, is that them? No, it's hard to sort of spot. The small craft are really small. So we'll just watch until we sort of see some leaving this particular base. So it will then start to send them out fairly soon, I would think. I'll just get rid of this stuff. And so we're now just sort of letting things run forward. Are we seeing any others? They should be close to where we are by now. Ah, there they go. There they go. It's very hard to spot. There's one in there somewhere. There, I think. Yeah, there's a superiority fighter there. Now I can actually, I can also just watch what happens with this one. I might just show what's going on. He's been hit. Now I'll just talk a little bit about what's going on with our actual ships and what's actually happening. This is a rail patrol escort. If I go and have a look at what it's made up of, it actually has things, for example, like it has got cruise speed and sprint speed. It actually goes faster than this, but that's it does sort of change things a little bit when you sort of are looking at it in combat than when it's what the actual design is. It's probably only travelling at that speed, I would guess. Oh no, it's travelling at 88, which is the maximum speed for this particular craft. Now it is firing a point defense beam at the small craft, which is what the point defense does. And so point defense is used to take on missiles or torpedoes or small craft. And so you do sort of need that on your ships. Now what we actually have through here is we have a point defense cannon back over this side. So our sentinel multi, actually on the other side, sorry, that's that there is a small multi-beam defense cannon. It's got a field of fire back in through this side as well of 270, which means it can actually fire pretty much, if that's it can fire that from there all the way around behind the ship to there. So it can actually protect the vast majority of the ship except for this broadside over here. So there's just 90 degrees on that side of the ship that it doesn't protect. On the other side of the ship we have a railgun. And a railgun is a very short range weapon. This is only 880 and it also has a 270. So from the front or from the rear, both these can fire on whatever it is that they actually happen to be looking at. They've got things like rates of fire. These guys here, the railgun does 11 damage for each slug. There's 2 slugs per volley from this particular turret, and what it does do as well, about halfway down you'll see it's got a shield bypass of plus 40% and an armor bypass of negative 20. It basically means that some of the shots will actually break through the shielding and do damage to the next layer underneath, which is the armor. Unfortunately, with only 11 damage, the 40% that's left over when it does break through is not going to be strong enough to really do any damage to the armor on this particular base. But there is a chance every so often that there's a lucky shot that goes beyond the armor and actually does damage to componentry. So railguns can actually start to rip apart the componentry underneath the ship and at least damage it and start to bring things down, it's interesting to sort of see how that one does work. The important thing with this one though is that it moves quickly. It's got a railgun. Let's have a look at the other ships that we've got. So it's now starting to fire on that small craft. We've got more patrol escorts. These are all running at 88, which is the fastest. So they're rushing in to do the initial attacks. We then actually have a range of other sorts of ships. These are heavy escorts. If we have a look at these guys, these are running at only 53 speed. These have got different sorts of weapons. These have got Thuon beams, so this is a beam weapon, and the actual range of this is 1,100, so it's actually longer range than the point defense. We've still got point defense there as well. So this is slightly bigger in range than the point defense, whereas in this case the actual railguns are smaller than the point defense that we sort of see in through there. And so these guys, the Thuon beam doesn't do any actual damage, extra damage. If we just hover over that one through there, there's no things about bypassing shields or bypassing armor. It just doesn't do it. And so that's a different type of weapon. This is a beam weapon. So we've seen so far a railgun, we've seen a point defense beam. We've now seen a Thuon beam, which is a full length beam. You see the fire type there is full length beam. These all rely on that field of fire, which is important. Now this one's all got an extra mounting through this side, so we've got Thuon beams in through there. Also, I should point out these ships have extra things. For example, like if I just scroll down, we've got targeting and countermeasures. This is really important, particularly for your small ships. So it's got a targeting of only 10%. We saw the targeting of the base, I think, was 35%, I think. But our countermeasures is 45%. Now, what this means is when if a shot is likely to hit us, about 45% of the chance of the time it's going to miss. For our other one, it was actually 35. So it's about a third of the time whatever shot is being fired at it will miss anyway. That's if it had a 100% chance of actually hitting. So it can still avoid the shots. This is quite important for these small ships, and this is the smallest of our ships. So this one here is quite strong because it's got the extra mount, and we've got Thuon beams on board here. Now, technically, they do less damage, but the actual damage that they do is 24, which is actually more per shot than what the railgun will do. But the railgun fires at a much higher rate. But the damage that we do, the 24 damage, can actually ultimately do more damage against the shielding and the armor, etc., etc. I'll go again in a lot of detail as to how that all works in a future episode. But that's essentially what's sort of happening through there. So I've got a beam, but these have to line up with the field of fire that we actually have through there. Let's have a look at the other ship that we actually have. Now, what's going on there? Now, our third ship design is this one here, which is the torpedo frigate. And if we have a look and see what it's actually got a couple of Epsilon torpedoes on board, which have got a range of 1680, so even longer range again. These are energy torpedoes, not missiles. Don't degrade because they are self-contained. They do the same damage no matter what distance they actually hit from, whereas the torpedoes do more damage the closer they are to the target. And so we're also now trying to sort of get in close with these guys as well to use their torpedoes. Now, torpedoes are a little bit different again. And again, I'm going to be going through in a lot of detail when we actually cover this. But these have got, you'll see it's got a shield bypass of negative 40%. This means that only 60% of the damage is done to the shield. Now, that's exactly the same as the railgun. The difference with a negative 40 means that we don't get any bypass at all. We just lose the 40% and it disappears. For the railgun, which is also, we had the plus 40% for the shield bypass, that 40% that didn't hit the shield goes through and does more damage, or potentially does more damage. But in this case, we lose that. So the shielding, these are bad against shielding, but then once they get past the shielding, these actually have an armor bypass of plus 40. And so these can then go, and 60% of the damage will be done to the armor, but there's another 40% of the damage will then go through that and actually hit the components in the ship itself. And so, and again, the sort of, it's a little bit like the way that railguns work, because there's still another percentage chance where you can sort of go bypass the whole lot and still do damage to other components, but you tend to be bringing the ship down very, very quickly. So if we can sort of pull apart the shielding, now beams are great at pulling down the shielding entirely. Railguns not so much, but they do damage inside the ship, and there's a chance that you'll do damage to components like shield generators and things like that. And then you've also then got things like the torpedoes. So we've got three different types of weaponry going in. These are also very, very slow with what they do. So these are the slowest of the ships. Let's just go and have a bit of a look to see what goes on. Now we had that first attack coming in against the small craft, which were over there somewhere. Let's just go and follow this one in initially. And so we're going to start to see there's actually now some of the there's a small craft there. It's very hard to spot it. It's now taken some damage. This guy here, I can actually go Shift T and actually watch it from the perspective of the small craft. And so it's now going to zip around. It's going to try, and it's actually being hit a lot, and it's going to be blown up, and it just got blown up. So we didn't actually get to see that one much. So that was just blown up there. We're still moving on in. Let's just follow this one in. I don't know, is there anything left? Yeah, two have now been broken. There's still two out there. So here they are, I think. Or maybe not. Can't see where they are. Anyway, they're in somewhere. Oh, there they are. They're back in behind this one again. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get in behind this ship, and so, or either one of these, and sort of take and do damage. We can see that there's been no damage done to shields, armor, or hull at this stage. Let's just continue on. Now we should be getting close to the line. Yeah, we're just hitting where it's going to be able to start to fire missiles. Let's just see if we can spot the missiles being fired as it comes back in. There they go. So these are now missiles that are being fired from the base. Now there's going to be 8 in each volley, and it's got 2 of these, so it's going to be 16 missiles being fired at my ships. And again, the point defense needs to sort of try to stop them. These guys are firing at the small craft that are currently there. Let's just let it go back in. We've just blown up another small craft. There's another one back in there somewhere. They're all firing at it. There it is there, actually. We just saw it. It just got blown up. Now we've got the missiles coming in. So we've got missiles moving through this side. So this is a missile. Come in, and it just hit the ship. Now you see that that missile has now done damage to our shields. Our shields are down to 154. Another one coming in. It also hit. We're down to 143. Another one of the volleys coming back in. That one missed. So they'll actually sort of come in and do different damage and through there. We've taken a lot of shots now on our shields. We're down to 136 with the shields. Let's just keep it coming in. Now these are also taking a bit of damage, or they're trying to use their point defense to sort of stop the missiles from coming in. Let's just keep on watching. Now we're taking damage now from the long range, the long range. What was it again? The long range, the large. The heavy railgun. The L next to it means it's a large mount. The heavy railgun just actually hit our front ship, and so this one actually went through what's left of the shields and started to do damage against the actual hull itself. And so we've now lost a little bit of extra from the hull because of that railgun. Our guys still aren't even close to being able to get their railguns to fire yet. Now, because of the extra speed, these guys are now racing ahead. And again, I haven't actually selected anything of this other than telling them to go and attack. So they're going into attack. The other ships are slow, so they're coming in behind. Now, what I've done is I've got these sort of designated to, if I just go with that one selected, we can then sort of click on this button down through here, which is the set tactics. And we can see that I've got this set to retreat when the shields are below 20% or the armor is below 50%. Now at the moment, we're doing pretty well. We're above 50% with shields and only just taking damage on the actual armor. But let's actually look and see what actually happens with this. So again, you've got all these different parameters which really make it super, super interesting. Let's just go back in. So now coming in, I might just slow things down so we can start to look at it. So we'll look at it from the perspective of our craft. Now, it's slow between volleys of the missiles, and so we're now just waiting for it to sort of fire up. Actually, there's a heavy that just missed us. Now we're trying again to sort of hit the missiles that are coming out at us. Bang, it sort of hit us again. We're being hit a lot now with different missiles and also with the heavy rail. But see how we've now repaired the armor? Our damage repair in through this side has actually now just fixed up a little bit of that armor again. And so we're back up to 100%. But our shielding is still coming down slowly. Our recharge rate probably won't really be able to cope with this. Now I'm assuming we're now starting to actually hit this one with rail guns. And so we're now seeing that we're doing a little bit of damage to the shielding and a little bit of damage into the armor there. I think, actually no, not yet with the armor. Just watch what actually happens. I don't think we're going to do much damage there. Now that's just hit us badly. That big explosion means that got through and did some damage to us. And so we've now taken damage to one of our defenses. Is now actually, it'll be the armor actually. That's what actually what got hit there. Just keep on watching what happens. So we're now getting multiple ships going in with railguns. And so it's trying to sort of bypass. You can see a little bit of damage being done to the armor here. Now there's a chance that one of these will get a lucky hit and do some damage, some actual damage to a component. And that's sort of what we're half relying on. These are all the fast-moving railgun ships. The other ones, all of those are the fast ones. These are all the slow ones coming in. They're not even close to getting their range yet on their target. So it'll take a little while for them to actually reach it. In the meantime, these guys are going to keep on peppering away at the actual base itself. Let's have a bit of a look. And we can see there we're now being hit over here as well. This is interesting because what's happened here is the heavy railgun has actually smashed through the shielding and not really done much damage to the shielding, but it's gone straight through now onto the actual hull. Now the reason for that, and there's no damage at all done to the actual shields, the reason that there's no damage done to the shields, it's a chance that the shields will fail. And this is an example of exactly that. That railgun is actually, the heavy rail gun has actually gone and actually happen to bypass the shields entirely. Now, what that is if we have a look at at what we've got through here and look at the actual shield generator, this one here, you'll notice that it's got like a shield penetration chance of 20%. And so what happens is 20% of the time, the shield will fail entirely and the weapon will get through, and then it will do 50% of the damage of that weapon. If there is shielding there, 50% of the damage will then be done, and it's fairly big. The damage from that railgun is fairly large. If you have a look at this one, heavy railgun, it does 52 damage per shot. Half of that is now being applied directly to our armor. So what's that? That's 26. And if we have a look back at, I don't want to go into, I'm spending too much detail in here, but if we have a bit of a look at that one there, so 26 damage essentially done to our armor. The armor, you can now see there's one of the defenses is now damaged. If we do go and click on that one, we'll see that one of them is now going to be sort of like a reddish color. And so this one, the damage status on our standard armor is now at 65%, and so we need now for our damage control unit to then pick it up. Now, I'm not actually getting in the middle of any of this. I'm not micromanaging this at all. It's just happening. It's not abstracted. It is fully simulated. So the whole thing is simulated through here. So these guys are now in at the range that they want to be at to fire their weapons. So more coming in. They're firing their small weapons at it. We're starting to slowly bring the shields down, but it's going to be hard with these. There's more coming back in. This thing is now repairing itself. Okay, so we've got repairs going in through there. Shield will be recharging. Repairs will be happening through here as well. Let's just have a bit of a look when we start to see. Now this one's also just been hit. Again, that one bypassed and did damage directly on the hull. Sorry, directly on the armor. Now we're getting a lot of point defense that we're stopping through there, but we're still taking a lot coming in. So they're getting a few lucky shots in on us. Now we've got that's the last of the rail patrol escorts. The other ones are still trying to make their way in. The torpedo frigate is probably going to be the next one to come in. It's almost at range now. As far as what's going on, these guys have actually done a good job. They've actually brought the shields down to half, even though they only 60% of the damage on shields actually does work. The rest of it, there's hardly any damage going in. If we have a look and see again what's going on through, why is there no damage happening in through here, but there's damage going into our ships? What's the go? Why is that happening? The reason for that is that our rail guns only do, and I'm going to talk about this in much more detail. The damage that we do is basically 11 when we do damage. Now, 40% of that gets past where we are. So let's just say there's 4 pieces going in. So four damage going into the actual ship itself. If we go and have a look at this one here and look at the Corvidian shields, we'll then sort of see that it's got like a shield resistance of 1. So it basically stops one of those damage going in. So if it's 3 or 4 damage, it's going to be just down to 2 or 3 every single rail gun that goes through. And I think that their shield regeneration rate at 1.6 is enough to just keep on popping up the armor. So even though the armor is probably being hit, it's not really getting through. But eventually we're going to get a lucky shot, which will then get through. And we'll see we've got one defense that's taken a bit of damage, but we've only done 1 point of damage, you can see there with the armor. So that's the piece that has been, but it's going to be repaired all the time. But the more we have firing on this, the better it will be. So all these little rail guns are just going to do one damage, or so on the actual. But it's very hard for us to keep what's going there. The important thing is for us to reduce the shields at this point in time. Now, probably what I should have done was actually not use rail guns here, but use the beam, like a beam ship, just to bring the shields down quickly, so that we can then have the torpedoes coming in. Now we should see the torpedoes coming in very, very soon now. This is our torpedo ship. Let's just follow this one in. In fact, it's just fired its torpedoes now. These are these yellow things. So the torpedoes are going to be fired. So these are energy torpedoes being fired at the actual base. Now, one of them is going to miss by the looks. Looks like that one's going to miss. Bypass. Yep, that one's missed. But these other two are going to go in. And so they're going to go in, but it's very, very long range, which means they're not going to do a hell of a lot of damage. We'll just watch. The shields are now down. They've been brought down. We're starting to do other damage now. One of the weapons has been damaged. And then when these things hit, they're going to bypass a lot of the armor. So they're going to hit, and we've now sort of done a bit more. We've got one of the general slots has now been damaged. We can have a look and see what that is. So the crew systems are now down to 95% because of the torpedoes. So anyway, I'm spending a lot of time just going through how this all sort of works, but let's just watch what goes on. So these guys are coming in, blasting more torpedoes. It's not as fast to fire as the rail guns, but they're going to do a lot more damage. Look at this. We've smashed through the armour now, and we're now breaking through into the actual craft, into the ship itself, into the base. And so the base is now taking a lot more damage. These guys are now all sort of geared up, ready to go. We've also got beam weapons now going back in. So the beam weapons, these heavy escorts, are doing what they need to do to also now add to the damage that's being done. So now we're going through and directly impacting the components and the hull itself. When the hull gets down to 0, we can have everything inside there destroyed, with 2% left in the hull, and it will still be there that can be then repaired. Not repaired from it within itself, but would need to send, or someone would need to send a repair ship to go and actually fix it up. But in this case, we are sort of smashing through. There's only what have we got? 1 normal defense left. We've got 2 weapons that are left. We've damaged 3 of them. We're putting even more damage down to the general slots, and these are sort of how it all works. We've got damage control units down, so it's not going to be repairing itself anymore. The command center has been destroyed, so that's the bridge. So the bridge has actually now been destroyed, which gives it other benefits. For example, it does actually help with its countermeasures and targeting. And so the targeting, I don't know if it'll show with that done. Actually, it is. Yeah, countermeasures have now gone to -10 because of the bridge going down, and the targeting has also dropped dramatically because of what we're destroying. So it's becoming weaker and weaker. So we'll just keep on watching. So we've now got all different types of these sort of weapons now coming back in. It's trying to now use its point defense missiles to shoot at the torpedoes. But they're now doing a big job through there. We've almost got it now. Just going to keep it on this angle here, I think. Bang, and that's now been destroyed. And so that just gives a bit of a rundown as to how combat works. Now, the only thing I actually managed with that, or micromanaged with that one, and if that's now just destroyed that particular group, the only piece of the puzzle that I sort of was doing in terms of giving orders was the initial attack order. Now, I can, if I'm wanting to, also go in and actually select specific ships and actually give them specific orders to move into different locations. I can micromanage it if I wanted to, but I don't have to. So that's a bit of a rundown of the whole combat scenario, I guess, as to how it works to build your ships, to build your fleets, to send your fleets into battle. You can do it with individual ships as well, by the way. You don't have to do it with fleets. You can actually get individual ships and say, I want you guys to attack this particular one. But fleets are good. Because that you get other bonuses by using fleets. And so that there, all I told was prepare an attack to hit that particular station, and I did nothing else. All I did was actually just enjoy the, enjoy the actual fight itself. I knew that the ships, if they got into too much trouble, and so these guys are now repairing themselves. There's hardly any damage done to these anymore. They've actually repaired themselves during the battle, and so they've now come back up. And they never got to the threshold of needing to jump away. Now, there's a good chance, usually, that there'd be 1 or 2 ships that would need to sort of jump back out of there. But in this case, it hasn't had to happen. Anyway, this has taken an hour, which I was going to try to make a 10-minute video. And that's the honest truth. I was going to try to do this primer video in 10 minutes, but I just can't do it in that time frame. I apologise for the length of time it's taking. By the way, please consider liking and subscribing if you do like this sort of content. Again, I am sorry about the length of time. I am trying to make these short. I really am. As I say, when I went into this, I thought, how do I make this a 10-minute video? And I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll just quickly go through what to click on, and then we'll go from there. But there's so much to cover. But you can see, ultimately, there's actually not a lot that you need to manage. Even though there's a lot to talk about, you don't need to get too involved if you don't want to. If you want to, you can. So this is one of the beautiful things about Distant Worlds 2. It's entirely up to you how much automation you have or how much you actually take over yourself. Anyway, guys, also I did forgot to sort of mention at the start a special thank you to my Patreon supporters or anyone who's bought merchandise through the links below. Also, the game is available through the links below as well. So if you are wanting to support the channel by buying the game that way, that would be very much appreciated. I hope you did enjoy this particular episode. It's, as I say, a lot to cover in a very, very short period of time. I did try to make, and I do apologise again at the length of time, I did try to just cover the basics of it. I may have gone a little bit too far showing the nitty-gritty of the actual combat, but I think if you have a basic understanding, it does help. I'm going to be going through a lot more detail in the coming videos about the different weapon types, about how shielding actually works and all those sorts of things. So we'll have a look at that in some detail. I may even use this fight again actually, and it'll probably be a different result because there's a random component as to what will actually happen. But that was a nice little fight there. So if we just go and sort of let it finish off, these guys are now finished. Job done. And successful mission. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time.